Hey y'all, welcome to another powerful, brand new story. I really hope you love it, and if you do, make sure to join the fam by hitting that subscribe button and dropping a comment to let us know where you're watching from. Let's dive in.
The ice storm had silenced the city. Snow swirled in brutal gusts between the tall buildings, clinging to streetlights, mailboxes, and abandoned cars. Sidewalks turned into sheets of slick white, and even the busiest avenues felt deserted, except for one narrow corner where a crumpled piece of cardboard barely shielded a child from the frozen ground. She sat cross-legged, arms tightly wrapped around her knees, chin resting on them. Her small body trembled, not just from the cold, but from everything else she'd been through. Her name was Emily Carter, and she was 7 years old. Emily hadn't eaten in 2 days. The jacket she wore was too big, clearly meant for an adult, and her jeans were thin and damp from the snow. Her hands, raw and red, were tucked under her arms for warmth, but it was her feet that caught the attention of those few who passed by. Barefoot. Bleeding. Bruised. Her heels had cracked open from the icy pavement, leaving dark smudges on the paper beneath her. But no one stopped. No one looked long enough to care. Except for one man. Jackson Reed wasn't supposed to be walking that day. The roads were bad, his chauffeur had insisted they stay indoors, but Jackson, a billionaire real estate mogul and CEO of Reed Holdings, needed air. Something had felt heavy on his chest all morning. He couldn't explain it, he just needed to walk. Dressed in a long charcoal coat, scarf tucked around his neck, leather gloves on his hands, Jackson strolled through the storm like a man trying to outrun something unseen. Until he saw her. At first, it didn't register. A bundle on the sidewalk, maybe someone's trash. But as he came closer, the bundle shifted, revealing a little girl's face beneath wild blonde bangs. Her eyes lifted slightly, just enough for their gazes to lock. And that was it. He stopped mid-step. The wind pushed against him, but he didn't move. Her face. Her silence. The blood on her heels. Something shattered inside him. God! He whispered, approaching her slowly, unsure if she would bolt. She didn't. Hey, sweetheart, he said, his voice trembling more than he expected. Are you okay? Emily blinked. She didn't answer. She just stared, her lips purple from the cold. Jackson knelt down beside her. That's when he saw the full extent of the damage. Her feet weren't just cold. They were wounded. Blood mixed with the snow beneath her, tiny tracks of pain and survival etched in crimson. He muttered. What happened to your shoes? No reply. He noticed she was sitting on 2 flattened cereal boxes. That was all that separated her from the frozen cement. Where are your parents? He asked gently. She lowered her head. Gone. His throat tightened. Gone where? She shrugged slightly. Mom died. Dad left. Jackson felt as if the wind had punched the breath out of him. She wasn't just cold. She was alone. He glanced around. No one. No cameras. No crowd. Just the snow and this child. This broken, barefoot little girl. My name's Jackson, he said softly. I'm gonna help you, okay? Emily didn't resist when he took off his gloves and unwrapped the wool scarf from his neck. Carefully, he lifted her small, freezing feet and wrapped them inside it. When he touched the torn skin of her heels, she winced, but made no sound. You're safe now, he said, though he wasn't sure she believed him. A tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He reached into his coat and pulled out his phone, dialing the number of someone he trusted more than anyone, Angela Monroe, his personal assistant, friend, and the woman who'd once been a nurse. Angela, I need you, he said when she picked up. Right now. I found a little girl. She's hurt. And she's alone. Angela's voice sharpened. Where are you? 5th and Main. Near the old bakery. I'm coming. He hung up and looked at Emily again. Her eyes were fluttering, half awake, half fading. You're not going to sleep, he said, tapping her cheek gently. Stay with me. Just a few more minutes. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, then pulled her close, shielding her from the wind with his body. She smelled of smoke and cold dirt. He didn't care. In that moment, nothing mattered except keeping her alive. "Emily," he whispered, "you're going to be okay. I promise." She leaned against him weakly. And for the first time in a long time, she whispered back, "Okay." The warmth hit Emily like a wave the moment Jackson carried her through the doors of his penthouse suite. Her tiny frame, wrapped in his coat and scarf, shivered against his chest as if her body didn't yet believe the nightmare was over. Angela Monroe was already there, kneeling beside the fireplace with the first aid kit open on the floor. Her eyes widened when she saw the blood dripping from Emily's cracked heels. "Oh my God!" she whispered. "She's just a baby. She wouldn't talk much," Jackson said, gently placing Emily on the soft couch near the fire. "Said her mom died. Her dad left." Angela's expression darkened. "Of course he did." Emily blinked up at them, confused by the luxury surrounding her. The flickering fireplace, the high ceilings, the giant windows showing the storm still raging outside, it all felt like a dream, like one she might wake from back on that piece of cardboard. "You're safe now, sweetheart," Angela said, gently taking her foot. "I'm going to clean this, okay? It might sting a little." Emily nodded faintly. Jackson knelt beside them, unable to look away. Her feet were raw, the skin around her heels torn and bruised. Every time Angela dabbed antiseptic, Emily flinched, but she didn't cry. "She's tough," Angela said, glancing up at Jackson. "Too tough for someone her age." He swallowed hard. "How long do you think she's been out there?" Angela sighed. "Days, maybe longer. These wounds, they didn't happen all at once. She's been walking barefoot a while." Jackson looked at Emily again, suddenly overwhelmed. "What kind of world lets this happen to a child?" Angela said nothing. There were no words. Once the bandages were in place and Emily's feet were wrapped in warm socks, Angela helped her sip on a hot cup of cocoa. The girl's lips trembled from the heat, but she sipped slowly, carefully. Jackson brought over a blanket and tucked it gently around her. Emily finally spoke. Her voice was soft. Barely there. "Why are you helping me?" Jackson met her eyes. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago. And I'm sorry no one did." She stared at him for a long moment, then looked down into her cocoa. Angela stood and gave Jackson a subtle look, nodding toward the hallway. They stepped into the kitchen, leaving Emily by the fire. "Jackson," Angela whispered. "You know what this means, right?" He nodded. "I'm not leaving her out there." "I know. But what's the plan?" "She's a child. The system's going to get involved." "I'll call my lawyer in the morning," Jackson said. "I want to file for temporary guardianship. At least until we figure out if she has any other family." Angela placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're doing the right thing." He looked back at the small bundle on the couch, a child wrapped in a stranger's coat, surrounded by warmth she hadn't known in years, if ever. "She reminds me of someone," Jackson said quietly. Angela tilted her head. "Who?" He hesitated. "Me." Angela blinked. "You?" He nodded. "I grew up in foster care. My mom died when I was 10. My dad, I never met him. I know what it's like to be forgotten." Angela's eyes softened. "You never told me that." "I don't tell many people." They returned to the living room. Emily had fallen asleep, her cocoa half finished, blanket pulled tightly around her like a shield. Jackson sat nearby, watching her chest rise and fall. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat by the fire, phone in hand, typing out texts and emails, his lawyer, his doctor, even a private investigator. He needed answers. Who was this little girl? Where had she come from? What had she seen? By dawn, the storm had calmed. Outside, the city slowly stirred to life. Inside, Jackson's world had already changed. When Emily opened her eyes again, She found herself still on the couch, still warm, still wrapped in softness. Jackson was making pancakes in the kitchen. She sat up slowly, unsure if it was real. "You like chocolate chip?" he called. She blinked. "I think so." "Well, we'll find out," he said, smiling at her. Angela entered with a small shopping bag. "Hey there, sleepyhead. We got you some clothes and slippers. Want to try them on before breakfast?" Emily looked at them both, still unsure. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked. Jackson walked over, kneeling beside her again. "Because when someone is hurting, the least we can do is show kindness. You deserve that." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them quickly, as if afraid they weren't allowed. Angela handed her the bag. "Go ahead, sweetie. You'll feel better." Emily stood slowly, favoring her bandaged heels, and walked toward the hallway. Jackson watched her disappear behind the door, then turned to Angela. "She needs a home," he said quietly. Angela nodded. "And I think she just found one." The next few days unfolded like something from a fragile dream. Emily stayed in the penthouse, wearing soft pajamas and woolen slippers that fit her perfectly. Her wounds were healing, physically at least. Emotionally, Jackson could see she was still trapped behind invisible walls. She spoke in short sentences, always watched people with cautious eyes, and jumped at loud sounds. But she smiled now, just a little, when Jackson made her pancakes shaped like animals. And once, she even giggled when Angela tried to braid her wild blonde hair and ended up with a tangled mess. Jackson didn't know how to fix a broken childhood. But he was trying. And he wasn't alone. By the fourth day, his private investigator, Tom Granger, arrived with results. They met in Jackson's study, the one place Emily hadn't explored yet. Tom laid a manila folder on the desk. "Her name is Emily Carter. 7 years old. Born in Detroit. Mother, Rachel Carter, died of a drug overdose 11 months ago. Father unknown. No birth certificate lists one. No known relatives." Jackson sat back in his chair, the weight of the words pressing down on him. What happened to her after her mother died? Tom sighed. Foster care. Placed with a couple in a low-income neighborhood. After 3 months, they reported her missing. Said she ran away? She ran away? Jackson repeated, stunned. From a foster home? Tom nodded. The report was filed, but with limited resources, no one found her. She's been on the streets for at least 7 months, off and on. Sleeping in shelters, alleyways, even underground train stations. Jackson's fists clenched. She's 7. I know. Where were the systems? The services? How did no one see her bleeding in the snow until I came along? Tom hesitated. Because people don't look, Jackson. Not really. Not unless it costs them something. Jackson stared at the file, then slowly closed it. I want her protected, he said. Legally. Permanently. I figured, Tom said. Your lawyer's drawing up emergency guardianship papers. But CPS might still knock on your door. They can knock, Jackson growled. They're not taking her. Tom nodded. Good man. That evening, Jackson sat beside Emily as they watched a Disney movie she'd never seen before. She leaned against a pillow, her feet propped up on a fuzzy stool, her small hands gripping a stuffed bear Angela had bought her. Halfway through the film, she spoke, quietly, as if the words were painful. My mom used to sing to me. Jackson muted the TV. Yeah? What songs? One she made up. She'd hold me close and hum them in my ear when I was scared. He smiled gently. You remember any? Emily looked down. Not really. Just the way they felt. Warm? He asked. She nodded. Do you miss her? Emily's eyes shined. Every night. Jackson wanted to pull her into a hug, but he didn't. He was learning to wait, to let her choose. After a long pause, she whispered, She was sick a lot. She said she was tired inside. That's why she took the stuff. The white powder. She thought it would help her sleep forever. Jackson's heart cracked. Emily turned to him. Are you tired inside too? He swallowed hard. I used to be. But not anymore. Why not? He smiled softly. Because I met someone who reminded me why I should keep going. Emily tilted her head. Who? You. She blinked. Then slowly, she smiled. 2 days later, Child Protective Services arrived. Angela answered the door and led the social worker, Janet Moore, into the penthouse. Jackson greeted her politely, though every inch of him was tense. Janet looked around at the luxury, at the warmth, the photos already printed of Emily smiling on the balcony, petting Angela's dog. She's lucky to be here, Janet said. But it's still procedure, Mr. Reed. I understand, Jackson said. But let me be clear, I'm not letting her go back to a broken system. Janet raised an eyebrow. She's a ward of the state. That's not your call. Emily, hearing voices, came out of the guest room. She froze when she saw the stranger. Jackson saw the fear in her eyes, the instinct to run. He knelt down immediately and opened his arms. It's okay, Emmy. You're safe. She bolted to him and wrapped her arms around his neck. Janet watched in silence. After a long moment, she spoke softly. Do you want to stay here, Emily? Emily nodded quickly, her face buried in Jackson's shoulder. Janet sighed. Then I'll do what I can to support it. Jackson looked up, surprised. You will? You've done more in a week than the system managed in 7 months, Janet said. I'd call that parenting. That night, as snow gently began to fall again, Jackson tucked Emily into bed. Her cheeks were rosy from warmth and laughter. Her feet, now healing, peeked from under the covers in their wool socks. He sat on the edge of the bed. Do you know what tomorrow is? He asked. She shook her head. Our first day of forever. She smiled sleepily. You promise? I promise. Spring came faster than anyone expected. The snow melted from the rooftops, and the ice that once blanketed the streets was now only a memory, one that Jackson Reed would never forget. Emily, now a full 2 months into her new life, was transforming before his eyes. Her cheeks were full, her laughter louder, and her eyes brighter. The pale silence that once followed her everywhere had lifted, replaced by curiosity, confidence, and hope. She had a new bedroom, painted lavender, with glowing stars on the ceiling and books lining the walls. She went to therapy twice a week and loved the therapist, especially when she let Emily bring Jackson into the sessions and ask him questions too. That's how Jackson found himself sitting cross-legged on a beanbag chair in a tiny office while Emily looked up at him with serious eyes. Why did you cry when you found me? He hadn't expected the question. He glanced at the therapist, who gave a gentle nod. Jackson turned to Emily, then took a breath. Because I saw someone hurting, and I remembered how that felt. I remembered being a boy who needed someone to care. And when I saw you, sitting there, all alone, I realized I never wanted another child to feel what I felt. Emily tilted her head. And you didn't even know me. Jackson smiled softly. I didn't need to. I just knew I loved you. Emily crawled into his lap then, her tiny arms wrapping around his neck. I love you too, she whispered. Later that week, Jackson took Emily on her first trip outside the city, to a place he'd kept hidden even from himself for years. It was an old cabin in Vermont, where his late mother used to take him before she passed. He hadn't been back since he was 10. Angela helped pack, and insisted they bring a few of Emily's favorite things, her plush bunny, her sketchbook, and her now iconic slippers. The drive was long, but peaceful. Emily stared out the window, humming a tune Jackson didn't recognize. Where are we going again? She asked. To a place that used to be important to me, he replied. I think it could be special for us both. When they arrived, the cabin was just as he remembered, rustic, creaky, surrounded by tall pine trees and birdsong. Emily raced inside, her laughter echoing through the wooden walls. You used to live here? She asked. Just visit, he said. When life was hard. She nodded like she understood. Jackson built a fire that night, and they roasted marshmallows and talked about their favorite colors, songs, dreams. Do you think my mom would be proud of me? Emily asked suddenly, looking up at the stars through the window. Jackson looked at her, heart aching with love. I think your mom would be amazed by you. And I think, wherever she is, she's thankful that you're safe now. Emily nodded solemnly, then turned back to the fire. Will you always be here? She asked. Yes, he said without hesitation. She smiled. Then I don't feel lost anymore. Back in the city, things moved quickly. With the help of his legal team, Jackson filed the final papers for adoption. The process, normally lengthy and frustrating, moved faster thanks to public interest, emotional evidence, and Janet Moore's glowing report about Emily's well-being. On the day of the court hearing, Jackson dressed in a navy suit. Emily wore a little white dress with tiny yellow flowers. Angela came too, her camera ready. Inside the courtroom, the judge, a gray-haired woman with kind eyes, reviewed the file quietly before looking up. Mr. Reed, she said, you understand the weight of this responsibility? Yes, Your Honor, he replied. And I accept it with all my heart. The judge turned to Emily. And what about you, young lady? Are you happy with Mr. Reed? Emily nodded. He makes pancakes shaped like bears. The judge laughed. Well, that's convincing. Then she cleared her throat and smiled warmly. By the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now declare the adoption final. Emily Carter Reed, welcome to your forever home. Angela snapped the photo just as Jackson lifted Emily into his arms, both of them smiling, both of them finally whole. That evening, back in the penthouse, Emily sat on Jackson's lap beside the fireplace, the same place where their story began. Do you remember the first thing you said to me? She asked. Jackson thought for a moment. I think I asked you about your shoes. She giggled. You were scared. He smiled. I was. You cried. I did. She looked down at her heels, now healed, soft and pink again. They don't hurt anymore, she whispered. Neither does my heart, he replied. Then, gently, Emily rested her head on his shoulder and whispered the word she'd been saving for the perfect moment. Dad? Jackson closed his eyes. He didn't cry this time. He smiled, because this time, he had everything he never knew he needed. Exactly 1 year had passed since the night Jackson Reed had found a barefoot little girl sitting alone on a piece of cardboard during an ice storm. The memory remained burned into his heart, the tiny frame, the frozen toes, the blood, and her eyes. Not just cold. Lost. Empty. Now? Those same eyes danced with light as Emily ran through Central Park in a pair of bright red sneakers. Dad! Look how fast I am! Jackson smiled, jogging slowly behind her. Don't get too far ahead, Speedy. Angela laughed from a bench nearby, sipping her coffee. She's going to outrun you before she hits 10. She already does, Jackson admitted, breathless but happy. Emily circled back, her cheeks flushed from the chill, her red scarf trailing behind her like a superhero's cape. She paused in front of Jackson and held out a small box wrapped in shiny paper. What's this? He asked, kneeling to her level. It's for you, she said with a proud smile. Happy Adoption Day. He blinked, surprised. You remembered? She nodded. Of course. 1 year ago, you picked me up and gave me pancakes. He chuckled and unwrapped the box. Inside was a small keychain with a bear-shaped pancake charm and a silver tag that read, Thanks for finding me, Dad. Jackson's throat tightened. He pulled her into a hug and whispered, Thank you for letting me. That evening, they returned home to the penthouse, where Angela had cooked Emily's favorite, mac and cheese with chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs. The dining room table had one extra seat. Angela had invited Janet Moore, the social worker who'd made it all possible. Look at you, Janet said to Emily. You've grown so much. I'm almost 8, Emily said proudly. And I'm learning to cook. Just no using the stove when Dad's asleep," Jackson added quickly, making everyone laugh. After dinner, they gathered in the living room, where a fire crackled and photos from the past year rotated across the flat screen. Emily in her Halloween costume, her first day of school, building a snowman on Christmas. "Can I tell them the story?" Emily asked suddenly. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Which one?" "The real one. About how you found me." The room quieted. Janet looked at Jackson, unsure. He nodded. "If you're ready." Emily stood up, her eyes serious. "1 year ago, I was sitting on the street. I had no shoes. My feet hurt so bad, I thought I was going to disappear. Nobody looked at me. Not even once." She paused, then smiled. "But then he came. And he stopped. And he cried. And he gave me his coat and his shoes." Angela's eyes welled up. "And then," Emily continued, "he gave me something I never had before, home." She turned to Jackson. "You saved me. But you didn't just find me. You saw me. Like really saw me. Even when I was invisible to everyone else." Jackson's heart felt like it could burst. "I'm not invisible anymore," she said, lifting her chin proudly. "Because I'm Emily Carter Reed. And I have a dad. And a home. And slippers that light up when I walk." Everyone laughed. Emily walked over and climbed into Jackson's lap. He held her close, resting his chin on her hair. Janet stood quietly and walked to the window, blinking back tears. Angela snapped one more photo. Later that night, after everyone had left and the dishes were done, Jackson tucked Emily into bed. Her room was warm, the ceiling glowing with soft starlight, her stuffed animals lying neatly along the pillows. "Dad?" she whispered. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you think there are other kids out there, like me?" He sat down on the edge of her bed. "I think there are more than we know." She nodded slowly. "Can we help them?" Jackson looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "Yes. I think we can." 1 month later, the Emily Foundation was born. A non-profit organization created to help homeless and abandoned children find safe, loving homes. It offered shelter, food, education, therapy, and most of all, dignity. The story of the billionaire who found a barefoot girl during a blizzard had gone viral months ago. But now it was more than a headline. It was a mission. They opened their first center near where Jackson had first found Emily. A place where no one would walk past a child on the street ever again. And every year, on the anniversary of their meeting, Jackson and Emily would return to that same corner. Just the two of them. One time, she brought her old slippers, now too small, and left them under a nearby bench, just in case another little girl might need them. Another time, she tied a scarf around a light pole with a note that read, "If you're cold, take this. You matter." And so the story that started with frostbitten feet and cardboard ended not with wealth or fame, but with something far more powerful. Love. A kind of love that saw beyond rags and pain. A love that bent down, wrapped a coat around a child, and whispered, "You are not forgotten." The storm had passed. And in its place, something beautiful had bloomed.